So this is Raylan from Raylan Tries Knitting, and we are going to be going over the Melt the Ice hat today. This is going to be a little bit of a tutorial, and it is going to be very beginner friendly. So if you are pretty new to this, you don't really know what's going on with this pattern, we're going to talk our way through it. The pattern is still definitely needed for this tutorial, so go support that and get it on Ravelry. But otherwise, I'm hoping this will be a very good introduction for people who don't really know where to start with this hat. First of all, you're going to need your yarn. I am using a 50% alpaca, 50% wool blend, whatever size that you are knitting. Just like the stockinette part of this hat in, I would recommend you also have double pointed needles for that, so you can close it up with a point at the end. It is so much easier than doing like the magic loop method or anything like that, but you could do that to get around it. I just get my dpns. You'll want a tapestry needle. It makes your life so much easier. If you absolutely do not have a tapestry needle, you can still just pull the yarn through at the very end through the loops, but this makes it so much easier. It is, I just got it at like Joann's when they were still open. It was not that expensive. It's just plastic. I have something to measure because we are going to be measuring distances for this hat, not going off of like row count. So something like this is important. I just have this from a sewing kit. I have my scissors, which you're gonna want those. You're going to want at least 3 stitch markers. I would recommend having ones that can clip and unclip. But you know, that is kind of up to personal preference. I just really recommend these, and it makes your life so much easier. You can even use paper clips, just tie a little string, tie a little knot with a different yarn color, that can work. These little stitch marker like safety pins, that works as well. I think I got these off of some clothes tags a long time ago, but you're gonna need a way to keep track of where you are and mark that. You're also gonna want circular needles. This is pretty long. You can get away with, I think it's like a 16-inch or something. You really don't need a long circular needle. Mine is just really long because it's interchangeable. And I have size, remember 2 sizes down for the ribbing. Again, that's kind of up to you. Look at the pattern, read the pattern, see which needle size is suggested, decide how tight or loose of a knitter you are, decide if you have interchangeable needles. If you don't have interchangeable needles, you could absolutely just go like 1 needle size down and just do the ribbing and the body in that 1 smaller needle size. So you kind of have options based on like what tools you have and don't have. I also recommend having a crochet hook of some sort. Again, I just got this at like Michael's from a bin. This just helps you pull through like the tassel, pick up any stitches that you drop and put them back on the needle. This is really like a go-to for me for my knitting projects. What I'm going to be showing you today in this video is the techniques and skills that you need to know to make the Melt the Ice hat. I still absolutely want you to go to Ravelry, purchase from the like yarn cult, the Melt the Ice hat. Please buy the pattern. I am not going to be sharing things about like the cast on, about like the exact numbers for dividing the hat, that kind of stuff. So please still go buy that, evaluate on how much you need to cast on, the different numbers that you would divide it by, for your weight of yarn, that kind of stuff. That is something that you should absolutely do. Please go support that. The funds are going to a very good cause for people who have been affected by ice in the Minneapolis area. So this is supposed to be a very beginner friendly tutorial. I would still definitely say you should probably know how to generally knit in the round, or knit in the round, know how to purl, know how to do a knit stitch. But other than that, I'm hoping that this tutorial will kind of lead you along the way. So even if you are a beginner and you don't have a lot of experience, you're still able to do this tutorial and knit the hat. So thank you for joining along, and let's get right into it. I've gone down 2 sizes for the ribbing. I would recommend going down at least 1 size for the ribbing. It's kind of up to you. I think I'm a little bit of a loose knitter, and I feel like this hat fits sort of loose, so having that size smaller, 2 sizes smaller for the ribbing, and then 1 size smaller for the rest really works for me. The first thing you're going to do is we're going to do a long tail cast on method. There are a lot of really great YouTube videos out there for it, but I'll show you here today. You're going to make your slip knot, and you're just going to attach that right on there. This is my tail end, and this is my working yarn that goes back to my bowl of yarn over here. This tail piece, I have it about 4 times as long as to what I think my length is going to be. The way to do a long tail cast on is, in my mind, kind of making a triangle or a diamond. So I've got my V right here. The closest one to me is the tail, and I stick my thumb in and I wrap it around. So that's how you're going to hold one of them. And then the other one, I typically wrap my pointer finger under and hold it with this finger. So it's kind of sitting like that. It makes kind of a diamond with your hand. You're gonna put your needle underneath that one with your thumb. You're gonna go around the pointer finger one and bring your needle back through the loop. And I would not make this too tight. I'm gonna show you this again. And there. All right, so I'm gonna pick up the speed just a little bit. You can rewatch that section, or you can always go look up many examples online for the long tail cast on. There are also so many other ways to do cast-ons. This is just a simple one that makes a somewhat finished looking edge that I will be satisfied with. So whatever you think you're going to be satisfied with, I would go with that and use that for this hat. You want to keep in mind that these should stay kind of loose, because when they're too tight, your hat's not going to be able to stretch. So this might even be a little bit tight. I'm a little bit bad about making these loose, so just do what you can to get this to relax and stretch out a little bit. What you're going to do is you're going to cast on the amount of stitches specified in the pattern, and I will meet you back here once that is all done. So I have cast on the amount of stitches that I needed to per the pattern, and that's including, when I count how many stitches, I'm including that initial cast on stitch right there. I am going to cast on 1 additional stitch. And we're going to use that to join this in the round. If you're working with far too long of a cord for your circular needle, what you can do, I think it's called traveling loop, not magic loop. I don't know, they're both similar to me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go about here, and I'm just going to pull this cord out. Make sure you're pulling from the side that it needs to get to. Okay, so I've pulled that through, and then what I'm going to do is pull my stitches up onto this needle. And we're going to start knitting, but before we do that, we do need to make sure that we don't have all these twists in the yarn, because if it's all twisted, it's not going to work. Like, it's just not going to work. It's going to create this endless twisting strip that you can't resolve, and you just have to completely restart. So please untwist your stitches and make sure that all of this fat edge that we just cast on is facing the interior. So we've got waste yarn in front and working yarn that is coming from the ball in the back. And what we're going to do, we've cast on our 1 extra stitch, and I'm going to move this stitch over. Just going to slip it over like if I was going to do a purl stitch. And then I'm going to pull this one over it. I'm going to see. Pull it over there. And you're going to kind of pull it tight. This can be tricky. Just pull it tight. And then you're just going to move that 1 stitch back over to your left hand side. And then just pull it tight here. This is the time where you're going to add your stitch marker on. And you're going to start knitting in the round. So we're going to knit this. And remember, we're taking our working yarn that's coming from the bowl. And we're going to do 1 knit. And then we're going to do 1 purl. 1 knit. 1 purl. There's so many ways to do these knit and purl stitches. I'm just showing you what works for me. And the way that I hold my yarn is very specific to when I'm doing 1x1 ribbing, or just ribbing, I guess. You can hold your yarn in any way and still make this work. When you've gotten to this point where your loop is coming up and about to hit your working yarn side, all you're going to do is come around to that right hand side needle just below it and just pull it through. And there you go. And anytime that you're getting short on space over here, you just pull it back through, and it just repeats and repeats over and over again for the entire time that you do your hat. All right, so I am approaching my beginning of round marker, and we're just going to do our knit and purls all the way to the end. And you want to make sure that you are ending on a purl, because the next one that you're doing, if you remember, we started with that beginning of round with a knit. So if for some reason you're ending on a knit stitch, you would have a knit, so you have to go back into your work and see where you messed up, or you may need to restart. I'd pull your tail tight, kind of connect those up nicely. And then, yeah, all you're going to do here, oh, look at that, I need to pull this around again. All you're going to do is go around and around and around with this ribbing. For however long the pattern says. I will say, I've already knit this hat, the pattern does not give enough length for the ribbing. If you want the hat as described and as pictured in the photos for the pattern, you should probably knit an additional 2 to 3 inches of ribbing. You can also do what I did, and you can just do plain stockinette stitch, just a plain knit stitch. And I did connect my ribbing. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to follow the pattern, and this was a big pain. I wouldn't recommend it, honestly. But this is about 5 inches of knitting total, and this added about 6 inches. I had to add in about this much more room to make it tall enough to fit my head. Just keep that in mind. You could do this all ribbing and it would look a lot more like the pattern, or you could do knit just like I have done, and it will just create a slightly different hat look. It's really up to you, but you will need to increase the height that is described in the pattern. As I have found, it is not tall enough for the hat to sit correctly on your head. All right, so I am going to just independently do this ribbing. This can take quite a long time. Ribbing is not very fast for me, and I don't think it's very fast for many people. But you are going to want to knit probably at least 6 inches of length of ribbing, and by length I mean the height of this. So, you know, this long of a piece. I will meet you when I'm quite a bit further, and I hope your hats come along very quickly. All right, so it is the next day and my ribbing is complete. I just want to show you about how long this is. So this is about 2.5 inches where it is folded double. Full length, we are looking at about 6 inches. At least that's what I measured last night when I finished this. Yep. If you follow the pattern from this point, and this is, you know, folded, it's going to be far too short for your head. The hat's probably gonna end about here, and it's gonna sit above your ears. So what I would recommend doing is, at this point, you're going to want to add about 2 inches of just a normal stockinette stitch. You can see on here on my finished hat where I have those extra 2 inches. So you can see where I have this folded over part, that little bit of extra, and then this space that I've added right here before I begin my decreases. This portion is about 1.5 inches, but I will be honest with you guys. I think probably 2 inches would even be a little bit better. So I would add that in. You can of course do that to your preference, but that is one way that I would really definitely deviate from the pattern. So we're just gonna do our knit and then our very last purl right here. And then we're gonna move that stitch marker and we're just gonna go straight into only knit stitches. So there you go. Sorry, I go a little bit fast. Okay, so we're gonna just do this all the way around to our beginning of round marker over and over again for the 2 inches. And again, for this spot, you could do ribbing, you could do stockinette, you could make a shorter hat and just get right to the decreases as the pattern describes. But for myself, I am going to put in this 2 inches here. So I'm going to meet you back when I have that knit up. I can't believe I forgot this, but I have just done 1 round, and either before that first round or just at this, before you hit your second round, you're going to want to probably switch out your needles. I have interchangeable needles specifically for this purpose. Whatever size you are, I would just go up 1 size. Again, that's kind of like your preference, and if that's the way that you knit with, your tension being like tighter or looser for the different stitches that you do. But for me, I do need to put these on. If you don't have interchangeable needles, you can just switch your stitches over. I am going to continue my knitting with the size 7s now. I have now knit about 2 inches of just plain stockinette stitch. You can see kind of this line right here where that ribbing stops. It is just shy of the 2 inches, but that is fine for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up my round here. And then we are at the beginning of the round. I am just going to slip that over, and I am going to put 1 more stitch just to hold it in place. But at this point, I'm going to divide up my work so I can mark where my decreases are going to be. As the pattern indicates, you're going to separate it out for however many stitches it says, to divide it evenly into 4 different sections. For me, I really only feel the need to put 2 stitch markers on, so I'll have my beginning of round stitch marker and then a stitch marker at each of the decreases. I'll kind of explain that a little bit better. I know people were a bit confused with the directions there. So I'm going to count all of these and put my markers, just following the pattern. All right, I've reached my first marker, so I'm going to just clip this on here. You can also do this as you're putting the stitches on. You can slide them on, but this is why I love my clip-on markers. Then what I'm going to do is I'll count this way, that number. All right, so I have arrived at my other stitch marker spot. I'm going to put that right there. And then I always do want to just check that I am where I think I am, and I'm going to count across all the way around here and make sure that I'm getting the right number of stitches. They do say put four stitch markers on, so I'd have my 1 right here, my 1 right here, I'd add 1 right here, and have 1 right here. So there's the 4. It would divide it evenly into the 4 sections. This one really wouldn't serve any purpose other than being a point that would reset the cycle of the pattern. So the way that this pattern is written is that you say, okay, you're going to knit up to here, you're going to do your decreases, and then you're going to knit back to the marker. And then it would say, repeat the previous thing, which is what we started with over here. So be, knit to the marker, blah, blah, blah. So this one is really just serving as a midway point to divide up the pattern and make it repeatable. You absolutely don't need to have this marker on there if you don't want. Honestly, you don't even really need your beginning of round at this point, but I'm going to keep it on there. The ones that are most important are the ones to each side, which are going to be indicating where our decreases are happening. Okay, so I have just counted across this whole way. It is the same as however many are on this side, and that is according to the pattern for how many I cast on. So I am good to go. I'm going to continue on. What we're going to do is we're going to follow what the pattern says. We're going to knit up to where we're going to do our decreases. So I'm going to knit up there. All right, and then as the pattern describes, I am just going to kind of explain this so this is not so confusing. You want to leave stitches right here, and what's going to happen is these are going to be decreased, and then we're going to knit across. So the way that we're going to do this is there is like a right leaning and a left leaning decrease, and the first one that we're going to do is a right leaning decrease. That's how we create these overhangs. See how this one kind of overhangs here and this one overhangs here. So they're going different directions. This is going to be a right leaning decrease and a left leaning. The right leaning increase is a knit two together. If you're looking for more information on that, there's so many great resources online for you, but I'm going to show you how to do it here. To knit two together, all you do is you just skip over this guy pretty much, and you're going to go to the one after it. And just like you're knitting, but you're going to knit both of them together. You're just knitting two together. It's this one is pretty easy, not so confusing. And then you just move on. You just keep knitting. Okay, we're knitting. So we're going to move that over, and then it's pretty much mirrored. So we have, again, those two normal stitches just like we did on the other side of this marker. And then we need to decrease these just like we did on the other side, but we're not going to be knitting two together because that would make a right leaning decrease, which we don't want. So we're going to do an SSK slip, 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 knit. So we're going to slip it like we're knitting, slip it like we're knitting, stick this one through, and then pull the yarn through, and then just keep on knitting. This is, per the directions here. So as the pattern indicates, then we want to get to our next marker, which we don't have our next marker on here because I don't see the need of it, to be honest with you. But if we were going to get to that marker, it would be somewhere here in the middle. So we're just gonna knit to somewhere there in the middle, since this number doesn't really matter. Like, we're not really counting the number of stitches at this point. All right, so I'd say we're about halfway at this point. So maybe my marker would be here, maybe we don't have a marker, doesn't really matter, but we look at where the pattern is and they say at this point you're just going to go back and you're going to repeat those original instructions. This is just like what we did when we approached that other decrease area. Okay, so I'm knitting up to my marker here, and I see I've got 5 stitches. I need to do one more. And then we are into our decrease period again. So just like we did before, this is on the right side of the marker. So we're going to do that right leaning decrease. Sorry, that is the air fryer if you hear the beeping. And this is knit 2 together. So we're gonna just knit the 2 of these, come from the back here, knit the 2 of them together like they're one. There we go. And then we're just gonna knit, I need to get my yarn, there we go. We're gonna knit again, and then we move that over, and then we're mirroring this again. And so we do our knit, knit, and then we need, and so these 2 need to do the decrease, and we're going to do our slip, slip, knit. So just like we're knitting it, we would stick it through here, but we just slip it off. Through like we're knitting, but we just slip it off. We stick that needle in, like through the front there, wrap the yarn like we're knitting it, pull it through both, and there you go. And then we just keep knitting. All right, so I am going to just, do my decreases for a while, and I'll be back and show you what progress I've made. I do encourage you to have different markers for your beginning of round and that other side if you do want to mark that other side, and your decreases. So for my decreases, I have this kind of a marker, like these types of flowers at the end. And then for my beginning of round, I do have this different marker. So I would definitely recommend having a way to differentiate it. Otherwise, if you have all your markers here, they're all gonna look the same, and it would be very, very easy to get your decrease areas confused and accidentally put some stitches here when you don't want to do that. So that is just my little tip. But again, that's kind of up to you on what you want marked and if you feel like you can keep track of that. Once you do start knitting your decreases, it becomes pretty clear where they are. It's just at this beginning when it's not so clear that I definitely would want to recommend that to other people, especially if you're a newer knitter, or this is kind of new to you. It'd be very hard to recognize at this point to see where those decreases are. Once you've gotten a few more, it'll be clear, but at this point it's still blending in very well. So I am getting to a point where it's getting very tight for me to do this knitting here, so I'm going to be moving over to my dpns, my double pointed needles. I will just show you one more round just if you need any more help with the decreases. So again, here is that right leading decrease. It's a little bit clearer now. And then that left leading decrease. It is getting kind of bright in here. The sun is shining in. You can probably see my face and my phone and everything. It's getting bright in here, so I hope it's not getting like washed out. But yeah, we'll show this. So this is the beginning of the round. And then I am just going to do my knitting. Again, just as described in the pattern. Please go by the pattern, support the causes that it is fundraising for. All right, so I have hit the point where I have 4 stitches left, and I'm going to be doing that knit 2 together. So we're going to knit those 2 together, and then we'll just do our knit. And then we're going to move our stitch marker over, and this is just kind of mirroring it again. So we're knitting those 2 like we just did on the other side. And then we're going to do our decrease. You can see it's a little bit bigger there. I'm trying my best, but it's just going to have a little gap, and that's fine. So we're going to do our slip, knit them together, pull nice and tight, and then we keep knitting. So I am arriving back at my beginning of round marker, and at this point you're going to want to get your double pointed needles ready, which is the same size as the needle I'm currently working in. Whatever needle size that you've done this main body part in, you want to have it be that size for your DPNs. There is a way to do this without double pointed needles, but it is not very beginner friendly. It's the magic loop method. I can do it. I really dislike it. I just go for my double pointed needles, and I just recommend that you get some double pointed needles if you don't have them already. So what we're gonna do here is I am actually just going to knit one of these just to kind of maintain my beginning of round marker. That just helps me. They come in packs of 5, and you will be using all 5 of them. The way that you will divide this up is you would put all the stitches from the beginning of round to the decrease to the middle of the knit to the other decrease, and then the decrease again to the beginning of round marker. So it's going to be divided evenly in 4. This is where it could be nice to have a marker over here. Otherwise you can just kind of wing it, or you can count the numbers and actually figure out which one is in the middle. It doesn't need to be an exact science here. So what matters is we just get it on needles that we can actually work up to a point in. So typically this one stitch would go on this one, but I want to maintain my beginning of round marker, and it's just going to fall off if I actually split it right there. So I'm just going to go, 1 over. And I'm just going to pull here, my right needle, pull that all through. So now what we're working with is just a whole bunch of loose stitches and 1 needle. This is all going to come over onto this one. So we're going to knit it like everything is just normal. So we're knitting it, and you don't want to pull too tight because it's gonna pull it from here. I did pull it tight, but yeah, just be mindful to not pull it too tight, or else you're just gonna make all of these really small. So this is the weird part of moving everything over to your double pointed needles, is it's just a little strange. So you just knit as normal. It's just like this became your right hand needle. And you're still gonna do your decrease like usual. So I'm going to knit 2 together, do my knits, and then I do let these drop off. I say, all right, I'm done with it, because you can see very clearly where your decreases are now. I don't know how you can see it on the camera. It's very clear in person that you know where your decreases are, and you just are gonna know to watch out and say, oh, hey, I've got my decrease coming up. So now we just put that needle to the side and we grab our next needle. We're just gonna knit again like normal. So we've got the other 2, because remember, this is our decrease one. Knit those 2, and then we want to do our SSK. Slip, slip, and knit together. Beautiful. And then we're gonna just continue here. All right, so that is about the center. I did do a little counting, and that's what I've determined is close to the center, if not the center, as you can see. So now we're going to knit from here to the marker, and that's gonna go on our next 3rd needle. And this is a decrease spot. So we'll do our knit 2 together. All right, and then our knit and our knit. And then we just let this relax. We're all done with that one. I'm just gonna get rid of this. And then we just have this last one. You can see this has all been coming off our circular needles. All right, so we'll do our 2 knits. And then we'll do our slip, slip, knit together. Perfect. And again, there's lots of videos on how to use double pointed needles. This is just my crash course on it, and to hopefully get you up and running for using them on this project. All right, so technically I've made it all the way back to that beginning of round, but I do want to maintain this one just for my sanity. So I'm just gonna include that 1 extra stitch there, or not the 1 extra, but the one from this side, just to hold it on. Okay, so there we go. We can get rid of our circular needle. And now we have this pretty evenly divided top of our hat. We still have our 5th needle, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working around with our 5th needle and basically swapping it out. So these stitches are going to come off and go onto here. This one will become free, and we'll do it the same with this one. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but I'm going to show you guys here so you can kind of see how this works. And we're just going to knit as normal. We leave enough decrease stitches. We do our knit 2 together. And then we do another knit 2. Okay, there we go. And then we continue on. And see, I now have this needle free. And then we do the exact same thing to this one. So you're just going to keep on doing this till you get down to a very, very small number of stitches at the very top of the hat. And then at that point, you use your tapestry needle to basically sew it up. And I will show you how to do that as well. Oops, my thing came off here. There we go. I'll show you how to do that as well, but I will meet you back at that point I will just keep going round and round doing these decreases until I get to the top, and we'll go from there. All right, so I am on pretty much my last decreases right here. I don't know how much you can see with this angle, but the decreases are going all the way up on both of the sides. This is all knitted right here. This does stretch quite a bit. There you go. And the way that you know that you're on your last decreases is that you're gonna run out of stitches to decrease. So you can see right here, I have one more stitch that's not included in this decrease lifted section. And that's on all of them. There's only one left. So I did take off my beginning of round marker, but you know, you'll just know when you're decreasing if one of them still has like 5 stitches rather than 4, you're not at your beginning of round yet. Once you get to your beginning of round, they're all gonna be even numbers. So for this one, I'm not even gonna do any normal knit. I'm just going to do my knit 2 together to start, just because that's all that's left for me to do is just a decrease. So knit those 2 together. We're gonna just do our knits that are in that lifted decrease section. All right, I'll do the same thing over here. Again, we're mirroring it, so this gets a little bit like unmanageable at this point. There we go. So let's do our knit, and then I see we only have one more to decrease, so we'll just do our slip, slip, knit together. Okay, to finish this up here, we've got our 2 knits. And then we just have these 2 right here. So we'll do our slip, slip, and knit together. If I can get it in, there we go. Knit those 2 together. So what we have left is we have 3 on each needle. And there's nothing left for us to decrease here. Because if you look, we just have our lifted section. And we have our lifted section. There's no like lower section here anymore. If you can see that. Lifted section, no, there's no more middle section for us to like decrease. So what we're gonna do, this is like scary part, but it's gonna be fine, is I give myself quite a bit of length. You do not need this much length. And you're gonna cut it right here. This is so scary. And we're going to put this on our needle. This is the needle I have. Just make sure you can get your yarn through it and you should be fine. Okay. So we ended on this one. So instead of like knitting the next ones, I'm just going to like sew through them. So just put it through those 3, pull it through. Make sure it's off this needle here a little bit. It was hooked. Okay, I'll just take that needle out, and then those are done. Then we move on to the ones after those. We're gonna get those 3, stitch through those, and you see it's kind of pulling tight, like a drawstring, almost. And then again, these 3. Okay. You can do it one by one as well. I just like to do them in these groups of 3 because it goes pretty quickly. And then this is our last group of 3 here, and it's going to be off of our needles. There you go. And there, okay. All right, so it's like a drawstring right now. I will say that I do like to go through kind of again for a couple of them. So I'm just gonna go through those first 3 again while I haven't pulled it so tight. There we go. And then you kind of pull it tight. Okay, and so it's pulled tight. There we go. And what I do is I pull this through, I stick it right in the middle, and I'm going to catch it on the interior. So we're going to flip this inside out. I did have to add a little bit of yarn here, so that's why I've got that going on. But we pull it through that top till it's tight. And then again, this is like, you can do what you want to do, but I want to put a knot here. I'm not going to risk this coming undone. I usually hook it under like 2 of these right here. And then I just tie a knot. So there's a knot. I'm going to put it through that other loop. So we've got kind of like a double knot here. Pull that tight. Beautiful. And then I typically, again, up to personal preference, I typically do just like a standard knot also on top of here because I'm really scared. So I'm just going to put another knot right there. Okay. And then I'm going to cut this. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail because I am going to want to, you know, weave this in at some point. So just a little bit of a tail. It doesn't need to be crazy long, but a little bit like that. Perfect. All right. And then we're going to move on to putting the tassel on the hat. And I'm just going to ignore my stuff I need to weave in here. I'm just going to ignore that for now because we'll revisit it later. All right. So the hat is like pretty much done at this point. And really all we need to do is add in that tassel. You can follow the directions for what it says on the length of yarn for the tassel. I'm just going to pull out a length of yarn. It's a little bit shorter than what is described in the pattern, and that is what I'm going to work with. I've got this length of yarn with the number of strands that's indicated in the pattern. And this was a little bit confusing for me on how to put it through the hat to make a tassel. I'm sure there's many other ways to do this, but this is just the way that I do it. I am basically going to loop it through here, like loop it through the back side like this and have the loose ends like that. So that's how I'm going to do it. I am actually going to just bring it in the back and then pull it forward. So I'll demonstrate. And then I'm going to kind of flip this inside out again. Okay. And I can see right where that center is. This is the part where you're going to really want your crochet hook. This is the one I have. Just make sure it's not massive and you'll be good. Where I'm going to hook mine through is right at the top of this circle where we just like sealed it up. I'm going to pick in the middle of that raised section. I'm going to pull through there. I don't think that's quite the middle. I'm going to go one over. There we go. So in the middle of that raised section. And I'm just going to like pull all of these strands through. And I'm going to do that by just twisting it, making it tight, hooking it, and then pulling it through the hole. This could just take you a second to get. And that is like totally fine. If you have to take a minute to get this to go through properly, I usually kind of like try to stretch out the hole that I want it to go through as well. So see, I'm trying to like make a clear path for it. This is kind of a lot of yarn to like pull through a single hole, but there we go. Okay, perfect. So I got that through, and you're not going to pull both of these through because it would just defeat the whole purpose. But you're going to want to hold on to the long side and then pull that short side through. And then there you go. You've got your first one in. You can see it's on this side of the sealed up portion. And I'm going to want my other one over here. So I can just stick it through there. And you can see, same spot pretty much. We're going to take this side We're gonna pull these ones through. All right, and again, like the other side, you're gonna just hold this one that's already pulled through and then pull the rest of this out. There you go. So now you have something you can turn into a tassel. What I would recommend is find which side of the hat you want to be the front. I think this is where my beginning around is. I can just slightly see. So I'm gonna make this the front. So I'm gonna make this the front. So I'm gonna have that on the top when I do this. And then make sure the ends are even. They're not right now, so I wanna even them out. Okay, that's pretty even. I'm going to split these up into even groups. So you'll split it into 3 even groups because we're going to be braiding this, 3 even groups on both sides. Okay. And then I'm going to connect those 2 together, those 2 together, and those 2 together. That's how I'm going to do this. So these are together, these are together because we're just braiding. And then these are together. I'm going to kind of put my yarn bowl here to like hold this so I can braid. Okay. And then all you're going to do is you're just going to braid. And I would kind of make sure that your yarn is straight. It can be kind of as neat or as messy as you want. And you can braid as tightly or loosely as you want. And well, yeah, just braid until you get kind of close to the end, and I will meet you at that point and we will finish it up from there. All right, so I have made my braid as long as I would like, and I'm going to tie this with just a really big knot. So all you're gonna do is seriously just tie a knot, and I kind of go up a tiny bit onto the braid. I don't want like the braid pattern actually in my knot, but I don't want extra, you know, unused room. So there we go. We just tie our big knot at the end of the braid, kind of push it up, pull it down, make sure it's on very securely. You can trim these if you want. I might just trim them to be a little bit more even. I don't really want to lose a lot of length here, but I'm just going to cut off a couple of these little ends that are kind of long. This is like giving a haircut. There we go. Okay. And then there is my tassel. So now the hat is honestly all complete. I'm going to kind of back up and give you a better picture of the hat, and I'll show you the final version. This is the one that I have just knit up. It is not blocked yet. This is the one that I have blocked. I did connect the brim, and this one I did not. I think it'll end up looking just fine with it not connected. It just looks kind of weird because it's not blocked. Once it's washed, it'll even out by quite a bit.